The wind of Mercy Creek carried more than dust that evening. It carried whispers of sins buried deep in the red soil of Arizona. Elijah Boone, a lonely rancher with weathered hands and a heart as dry as the desert, rode home slow that night, his horse's hooves sinking into the soft, dying light. For years he'd lived alone, tending cattle, mending fences, and trying to forget the things he'd seen during the Apache wars. The land was quiet now, but silence in the desert was never peace. It was a warning. He passed through the stretch of canyon where old oak trees grew twisted like ghosts frozen mid-scream. That's when he saw it, something hanging from one of the lower branches, swaying in the dying wind. At first, he thought it was some old trap left by hunters, but as he rode closer, his gut turned heavy. It wasn't a trap. It was a girl, no more than 12, her small body limp, her black hair brushing her shoulders, her bare feet swinging just above the dirt. Around her neck hung a crude wooden sign that read, "White man don't forgive." Elijah's breath caught in his throat. The world seemed to stop. Even the wind went still. He leapt off his horse and ran to her, his trembling hands cutting the rope loose. She fell into his arms, light as air, fragile as a prayer. For a moment he thought she was gone, but then, faintly, her chest rose. She was alive, barely. Elijah laid her down, tearing his canteen open, pouring water over her cracked lips. Her eyes fluttered open, dark and filled with terror, like a wild creature cornered. "Easy," he whispered, his voice softer than he'd used in years. "You're safe now." But the words felt like lies. Out here nothing was ever safe. He carried her to his horse, wrapped her in his worn coat, and rode hard toward his ranch. The night grew darker with each passing mile, stars blinking down like cold witnesses. He didn't know why he cared, why he didn't just leave her there and ride away. But something deep in him, something long dead, had stirred. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was hope. At the ranch, he laid her on his bed, lit the lamp, and cleaned the bruises on her neck. She was Apache. He could tell by the beads tied in her hair and the old tribal markings faintly painted on her skin. "What in God's name happened to you?" he whispered, but she didn't answer. Her eyes darted around the room, frightened, lost. She spoke only once in a trembling voice. "They kill my people. Now they want me." Then she closed her eyes again and slipped into a deep, uneasy sleep. Elijah sat beside her through the night, staring into the flickering flame. The sign's words haunted him. "White man don't forgive." He knew what it meant. He'd fought in the raids, seen the hatred burning both ways. He'd done things he never spoke of. Maybe this was the land's way of making him remember. By morning she woke with a fever. Elijah fed her soup, cooled her head with a damp cloth, and tried to piece together the story. Her name was Tyre. Her village had been attacked 3 nights ago by a gang of settlers, claiming the land was theirs. Her mother had been killed, her father taken, and she'd been captured, then strung up as a message. Elijah clenched his fists until his knuckles went white. He'd known some of those men once, worked beside them, drank whiskey with them. He'd turned away from that kind of life years ago, thinking he'd buried his past under the sand. But it had come back, hanging from a tree. Over the next few days, Tyre grew stronger, though she spoke little. She spent hours sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. Elijah noticed she flinched every time a horse passed or a coyote howled. One night, when the moon rose blood red, she whispered, "They come soon." Elijah knew she was right. Men like that didn't leave witnesses. Sure enough, 2 nights later, he saw dust rising in the distance, a group of riders heading his way. He loaded his rifle, his heart pounding with something that felt too much like old fear. He could have run. He could have handed her over and been done with it. But as he looked at her, small, trembling but alive, something changed in him. He'd run from enough ghosts. Not tonight. When the riders arrived, they called out from the gate, "Boone, we know you got that Apache girl. Hand her over, and we'll forget we saw you." Their laughter was sharp, cruel. Elijah stepped out, rifle in hand. "Ain't happening," he said. The men sneered. "You protecting her now, Boone? After all the things you done to her kind?" He didn't answer. He just cocked the rifle. The desert went still again, as if even the wind waited. Then it erupted, gunfire shattering the quiet night. Bullets ripped through the air, splintering wood and echoing through the canyons. Elijah fired back, hitting one of the men square in the chest. The others scattered behind rocks, shouting curses. Tyre crawled to the corner, clutching the old revolver he'd given her. "Stay down!" he shouted, but she didn't listen. The fight raged until dawn painted the hills red. When the smoke cleared, 3 men lay dead in the dirt, and the others had fled. Elijah stumbled, bleeding from a wound in his arm, but he was alive. Tyre rushed to him, pressing her small hands against the wound. "You saved me," she whispered. He looked at her, and for the first time in years he smiled, tired, broken, but real. "No," he said softly. "You saved me." As the sun rose, Elijah buried the dead in silence. He didn't mark their graves. They didn't deserve names. When it was done, he turned to Tyre. "You can't stay here. It ain't safe." She shook her head. "You come with me. My people hide in mountains. You will be welcome." Elijah looked toward the horizon, the same land that had taken everything from him, and realized he had nowhere else to go. Maybe redemption wasn't in staying behind walls, but walking beside someone brave enough to forgive. He saddled his horse, helped her up, and together they rode toward the mountains, where the sun burned gold and new. Days later, they reached the hidden valley where Tyre's tribe had taken refuge. When they saw Elijah, some reached for their weapons, but Tyre stood in front of him, shouting in her native tongue. The chief stepped forward, his face carved from stone. After a long silence, he nodded. "You fought for her," he said. "Then you fight with us." And just like that, Elijah found himself part of something greater than his guilt, something he hadn't felt in years, a purpose. That night, as the tribe sang under the stars, Elijah sat beside the fire. The memory of that hanging tree still burned in his mind. But now, when he saw it, he didn't see death. He saw rebirth. The desert hadn't taken him. It had tested him. And for once, he'd chosen right. He'd chosen mercy over hate. As the flames danced in his eyes, he looked at Tyre and whispered, "Maybe forgiveness ain't something we earn. Maybe it's something we give." She smiled faintly. The wind carried her quiet voice back to him. "White man, forgive." The story of the lonely rancher and the Apache girl became a whisper across the plains. How one man's guilt turned into courage, and how one child's pain gave a broken man a reason to live again. Out in the vast silence of the West, redemption didn't ride in on a preacher's word or a sheriff's badge. It came on horseback, under the blood-red sky of Mercy Creek. And for those listening now, remember, sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with guns, but with grace. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button, join our journey, and keep the spirit of the Wild West alive, where every tale reminds us that even in the darkest corners of the desert, forgiveness can bloom like a wild rose.